It would never have occurred to me that my accustomed life would crumble to ashes on a perfectly normal Tuesday. 8 years. For exactly that long, I sincerely believed in that wonderful fairy tale that we had built together with Jessica. All those 8 years, I was convinced that I was married to my soulmate, to a faithful partner, to a woman who was ready to go through any trial with me. My name is Mark. I am 35 years old. I dedicated a large part of the last decade to construction management, working 12 hours a day under the scorching sun of Arizona. I built office complexes and shopping centers to provide my wife with the comfort she deserved. Jessica is 33 years old. She possesses that natural beauty that makes people pause even in an ordinary supermarket. She works part-time at a marketing agency in the city center. At least that's how I imagined her daily life. We had no children. "I'm not ready yet," my wife answered every time I brought up the topic. "Maybe next year." One year gave way to the next, and eventually I simply stopped asking. Looking back, I understand that I should have noticed the warning signs. The estrangement crept into our relationship like the morning fog. The way she placed her phone face down on the dinner table. The sudden passion for yoga classes that stretched late into the evening. The coldness with which she received my touch at night, turning away as if I were a complete stranger to her. But because of the enormous workload, I convinced myself that this was a normal process. Every marriage has different phases. People are just tired. While I was building our shared future, she was apparently building something completely different. That Tuesday, a cloudburst broke over Phoenix earlier than expected, turning the construction site into an impassable mud pit. The site manager sent everyone home by 3 in the afternoon. I should have called Jessica and told her about my early return, but I wanted to surprise her. The thought came to me to go to a nice restaurant, to talk to each other like we used to. When I entered the house, there was silence. Jasmine's silver Honda was in the driveway, so she was home. I called out to her, but no one answered. The kitchen was in perfect order, except for an open laptop on the granite countertop, something my wife would never leave unattended. Right there, I saw it. A message notification appeared on the screen. The sender was simply listed as "die" with a red heart emoji. My stomach clenched with a bad feeling before I even read the text. "I can't wait for Saturday. Your place or mine?" My fingers trembled as I touched the trackpad. The computer was not locked. The message history opened, and my world finally shattered. Months of dialogues, flirts, suggestive photos, and detailed plans that took my work calendar into account. It was no random affair or recent mistake. Before me unfolded a calculated, long-lasting, and systematic betrayal. She was leading a double life while I exhausted myself with work to provide for her. The photos made me feel physically ill. Jessica in lingerie I had never seen on her, poses she never adopted with me, words of passion that never fell in our bedroom. A man named David sent equally graphic content in return. They discussed hotels, weekend trips, and how blind I was. One message from my wife burned itself particularly deeply into my memory. "Mark works late into the night every day. He has no idea we can do this forever." The sound of the opening garage door came. Jessica was back. I closed the laptop lid and went into the living room, thinking feverishly. Should I start an argument, pretend I knew nothing, or simply pack my things and leave? In my chest, it felt like I was drowning in my own house. The front door flew open. My wife came in with bags from Whole Foods, humming an unfamiliar melody. She looked radiant, and I hadn't seen that glow in her eyes directed at me for a very long time. "You're early," she said without looking at me, heading straight for the kitchen. "The construction site got flooded by the rain," I answered, and my own voice sounded strange to me. "Well, I bought food for tonight, Salmon," she began. "I saw the messages, Jessica," I interrupted her. The humming stopped. The shopping bags hit the countertop with a dull thud. She turned around slowly, and I expected to see guilt, shame, or at least tears of remorse in her eyes. Instead, her face transformed into something frightening, cold and calculating. "All right," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "So you found out everything, and what are you going to do about it now?" "What?" I stared at the woman I thought I knew. She stood in our kitchen with the composure of someone talking about the weather. "All right," I repeated, almost in a whisper. "That's all you have to say about it?" Jessica leaned against the kitchen island and examined her perfect manicure. Mark, let's face the facts, she said in an icy voice. Do you want to make a scene? Please. But let me save you time and explain how things will go from now on. Her clinical calm sent a chill down my spine. This was not the panicked confession of someone caught. This was a prepared speech. If you try to divorce me, she continued in an even businesslike tone, you will lose half of all assets. This house, your savings, your beloved truck in the driveway. Arizona is a community property state, Mark. The law's on my side. She paused to let the words sink in. And since, because of your own insistence that I take care of the household, I only work part-time, I would be entitled to alimony, probably for many years. My mouth went dry. She had thought everything through. While I was working overtime and building our shared life, she was studying ways to destroy it. If you fight back, Jessica added while looking at her reflection in the microwave door, I will drag you through the courts until you go bankrupt. My lawyer, yes, I already have one, says such proceedings take years. Depositions, hearings, appeals. How much do you think that costs, Mark? More than you earn in your construction business. I guarantee you that. It felt like I was watching the collapse of a stranger's life. Jessica, we were married for 8 years. How can you do this? I began. And if you so much as touch me or David with one finger, she interrupted me, you'll go to prison. I will make sure of it. One single bruise mark, one single scream that I record. Then you'll literally lose everything and have to explain to your next employer why there's a domestic violence charge on your record. David, so that's what the letter D meant. What? She came closer, and in her gaze there was almost pity. I'm not trying to be cruel, Mark, she said with false sympathy. I'm just honestly describing the situation to you. You have two options. You can come to terms with me seeing David, or you can leave. But either way, I won't stop. Come to terms with it, I repeated, feeling the words bitter on my tongue. He will come here on Saturday evening, every Saturday, she explained as if it were a given. You can go to the movies, visit a friend, or sleep in the guest room. I don't care, but it will happen, whether you want it to or not. She took a bottle of wine out of the bag. I bought his beloved Cabernet. I hope you don't mind that I used our joint account. I stood paralyzed by her unheard-of audacity. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or trying to save the relationship. She was merely informing me about the new reality, like a landlord explaining the lease terms. Why? I finally managed to say. Jessica shrugged indifferently. With David, I feel alive. With you, I feel stability, she answered with terrifying directness. Boring, but safe. I need both. She opened the wine with practiced ease. That way, everyone gets what they want. I'll have the thrill. You keep your beloved routine. And David gets me without all the hassle a divorce brings. She poured herself a glass and took a sip, watching me over the rim. When you think about it, it's very practical, she added with a satisfied smile. That night, for the first time in all our years of marriage, I slept on the sofa. Jessica lay down in our bedroom, probably texting David about how successful her exposure had been. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, while anger, humiliation, and something else I couldn't yet name simmered inside me. A cold feeling stirred in my chest, one that was about to change everything. The next days passed like a blur. Every morning I went to work, operated heavy machinery, led the construction crews, made decisions on million-dollar projects, and felt like a detached spectator of my own life. Jessica acted as if nothing had happened. She made breakfast, asked about my day, even reminded me to pick up the dry cleaning. This ordinariness suffocated me. She had destroyed our marriage with surgical precision and then returned to the role of the model housewife, as if she had merely rearranged the furniture. On Friday evening at dinner, she brought up the subject again. Tomorrow is Saturday, she remarked casually, while cutting her chicken as calmly as if she were discussing a shopping list. David will come around 7 in the evening. You should make plans. I put down my fork. How long has this been going on? I asked. 6 months, she answered without hesitation. Not a drop of shame. Maybe 7. And you seriously think this can go on forever? That I will simply endure it? I insisted. Jessica dabbed her lips with the napkin. Mark, you are a practical man, she said matter-of-factly. You built your career on solving problems efficiently. Well, this here is an efficient solution. We avoid the financial ruin of a divorce. My needs are met, and you keep the life you worked so hard for. And what about my needs? I asked quietly. You need security, stability, this house, your work, and your routine, she answered, gesturing with her hand toward the dining room. I'm not taking any of that away from you. I'm just adding something new to my life. Saturday greeted us with a crystal clear sky and that oppressive heat that makes Phoenix look like the surface of Mars. I spent almost the entire day in the garage sorting tools, doing anything not to think about the upcoming evening. Around 6:30 p.m., Jessica came out of the house. She looked breathtaking in that dress I had given her for our anniversary 2 years ago. I ordered you a pizza, she said in an almost maternal tone. It will be delivered in an hour. You can eat in the living room, watch TV or whatever. Just don't go upstairs. I watched her touch up her lipstick in the hallway mirror. Jessica, this is insane. You do understand that, don't you? I began. She turned around, and for a moment, something like regret showed in her eyes, but the feeling quickly disappeared. Mark, David gives me the same feeling we had at the beginning of our relationship, she answered quietly. Do you remember? That excitement, passion, the way I looked at you. Her voice grew wistful. I love that feeling. I miss it. Me too, I said softly. So you understand, she replied sharply. She looked at her watch. He'll be here soon. I couldn't stay. I grabbed my wallet and keys, drove off, and wandered aimlessly through East Phoenix while my wife prepared to betray our marriage in our own bedroom. I thought about calling my brother in Colorado, the few close friends, anyone who could help me survive this nightmare. But what would I say? That my wife is cheating on me and effectively gave me an ultimatum? I eventually ended up at O'Reilly's Bar, a cheap dive near the construction site where I occasionally had a beer with my team. That Saturday evening, it was almost empty. Just me, the bartender, and an old man in a worn leather jacket, sipping his beer at the far end of the counter. I ordered whiskey and tried to comprehend my life. Jessica had been right about the legal details. On Friday afternoon, I had consulted a lawyer, and everything was confirmed. Arizona's divorce laws indeed provide for a 50-50 split of assets. Her part-time income would most likely entitle her to alimony. A court case would cost me more than I could afford, and victory was by no means guaranteed. Rough night? The old man asked, interrupting my thoughts. I looked up. He had moved to the neighboring stool. Up close, his face seemed familiar, even though I didn't recognize him immediately. You could say that, I muttered. He studied my face intently, and his eyes widened slightly. Mark? Mark Sullivan? He asked, astonished. I looked closer. A weather-beaten face, gray beard, calloused hands. Jake? I finally said. Jake Thompson? My father's best friend nodded slowly. I hadn't seen him for 5 years, since my father's funeral, and back then, he had disappeared before I could speak with him. Dad used to tell stories about their service together, working construction, and adventures that always ended with Jake getting my father out of some trouble. God, kid, you look like shit, Jake said, and signaled the bartender to repeat the order. What's eating you? I hesitated. Jake was my father's best friend, but I barely knew him. Yet there was something about his calm, unshakable demeanor that inspired trust. Or maybe it was the whiskey. Marriage problem, I finally said. Jake nodded knowingly. I hear you, he replied. Want to talk about it? And suddenly I talked. Everything came out. Jessica's affair, her cold calculation, how she had legally cornered me, and the humiliation of that day. Jake listened without interrupting, without judging, with patient attention. When I was finished, the bar felt even quieter. Jake stared into his glass for a long time. Did your father ever tell you how we were caught in a pincer movement in Kandahar? He asked abruptly. No, I answered, confused by the change of subject. The Taliban had us surrounded. 3 days without supplies or reinforcements. We were lost, Jake continued in a matter-of-fact tone. But your father had a saying, every problem has a solution. Sometimes it's just not the one you expect. He looked me straight in the eyes. How sure are you that this David will come to your house on Wednesday? Did Jessica mention any changes to the schedule? The question surprised me. Wednesday? She said it wouldn't just be Saturdays anymore, I answered. Why? Jake finished his beer and stood up. On Wednesday, work late, stay on the construction site until at least 10 in the evening. He instructed me firmly. Make sure people see you and remember. And after today, kid, we never had this conversation. Jake, what? I began. Your father saved my life more than once. I owe him, he interrupted me with a cold, distant look. Trust me. He walked toward the exit but stopped. And one more thing, Mark. Think about taking a vacation next week, somewhere where phone records and hotel receipts remain. You know, a paper trail that proves you weren't even near Phoenix. Then he disappeared into the night like a ghost. I sat there for another hour, Jake's words echoing in my head. What was he planning? Should I look for him and stop him? But a part of me, the humiliated, cornered part, didn't want to stop anything. When I got home around midnight, only Jessica's car was in the driveway. The house was dark except for the master bedroom. I lay down on the sofa again, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, trying not to think about what was happening upstairs. On Sunday morning, Jessica made pancakes. She looked refreshed, almost radiant. Good morning, she said cheerfully. Coffee is ready. I poured myself a cup and studied her face. How was the evening? I asked casually. Wonderful, thanks, she answered without a hint of shame. On Wednesday, David is taking me to Scottsdale, to a new restaurant. Everything inside me tightened. Wednesday, just as Jake had asked. I'll probably work late, I heard myself say. The deadlines are piling up. Excellent, she replied, satisfied. It's better for everyone when each person has their own space. On Monday, I called my brother in Denver. We had been planning to meet for months, and suddenly I felt an urgent need to see him. We agreed on next week, from Thursday to Sunday, a long weekend for which I would need flight tickets, hotel receipts, and many witnesses. Tuesday dragged on painfully slowly. I couldn't concentrate, constantly checking my phone, but no message came from Jake. I began to doubt whether that conversation had been an alcohol-induced hallucination. On Wednesday morning, Jessica hummed under the shower. She had laid out a black dress I had never seen before, an expensive lingerie with price tags still attached. Through the bathroom window, I heard her say on the phone, 7:30 is the perfect time. Mark will be back late. I went to work with a heavy feeling, Jake's words in my ear. Every problem has a solution. Sometimes it's just not the one you expect. Wednesday dragged on unbearably. I worked with unusual zeal, volunteering for overtime, helping with the equipment, just to keep my hands and mind busy. My site manager, Rodriguez, noticed my concentration. I'm trying to stay on schedule, I answered, which wasn't entirely a lie. Around 6 in the evening, I texted Jessica, I'll be working late today. Don't wait for me. She sent a thumbs-up emoji back. No questions, no dissatisfaction. By 8 in the evening, most of the crew had left, but I stayed with Rodriguez and 2 other workers. I deliberately engaged in conversation so that people would remember me. At 9:30 p.m., my phone rang. An unknown number. Don't go home tonight, Jake's voice said, barely audible, a whisper. Stay where you are until I call back. The connection broke. My hands trembled. Is everything okay? Rodriguez asked. Yes, just family matters. We finished at 10:15 p.m. I sat in my truck on the empty parking lot and waited. The night was clear and cool. I tried not to think about what was happening in my house. At 10:47 p.m., my phone rang again. It's over, Jake said curtly. Drive home. Act surprised. I wanted to ask what exactly he had done, but the connection was already broken. The drive home took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. My street looked familiar. Quiet houses, light on the porch, occasional dog walkers. But as I turned the corner, I saw blue and red flashing lights painting the night in carnival colors. Police cars, an ambulance, and crime scene tape, all right in front of my house. I parked 2 houses down and walked on unsteady legs toward the chaos. A uniformed officer blocked my way. Sorry, sir, you can't go through here, he began. I live here, I interrupted him, astonished at the firmness of my own voice. That is my home. The policeman immediately changed his demeanor. He spoke something into his radio and then looked at me with that mixture of professional sympathy and suspicion typical of cops. What is your name, sir? He asked. Mark Sullivan, address 1247 Saguaro Drive, I answered. What happened? Detective Harris will speak with you, the patrolman said. Wait here. I stood and watched my life turn into a crime scene. Neighbors came out into the street, gathered in driveways, whispering and staring. Mrs. Gray from next door caught my eye and shook her head sadly. 5 minutes later, a woman in a dark suit approached me. About 45 years old, short gray hair, and tired eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Sullivan, I'm Detective Harris. We need to talk, she said officially. She led me to an unmarked sedan parked across the street. We sat in the front seats while forensic technicians swarmed through my house like ants. Mr. Sullivan, I have to inform you that 2 bodies were found inside, she began carefully. A man and a woman. According to papers, one of the deceased is your wife, Jessica. The words hit me like a physical blow. Although I had expected something like this, the official confirmation left me speechless. 2 people? I heard myself ask. Yes, she confirmed. We are identifying the man, but both were shot. At 9:15 p.m., a neighbor called in reporting shots fired. 9:15 p.m. Jake had called me at 9:30 p.m. I have to ask, Detective Harris continued, studying my face closely. Where were you tonight between 8 and 10 in the evening? At work, I answered mechanically. At the construction site on Indian School Road. I stayed late with the site manager and 2 other men. We were there until 10. She made a note. We'll have to verify that. Do you own a firearm, Mr. Sullivan? No, I said flatly. Have there been any recent conflicts with your wife? I looked at her, hesitated, and decided to be honest. We were having problems, I admitted. She was seeing someone else. Harris nodded understandingly. We need to take you to the station for a full statement. As we drove away, Jake's words seemed burned into the night sky. Every problem has a solution. The police station at midnight resembled a purgatory. Buzzing fluorescent lights, smell of old coffee and disinfectant. The weight of what had happened pressed on my shoulders. Detective Harris led me to an interview room where her partner, Detective Bowden, was already waiting. He was younger, with an aggressive energy that made me uncomfortable. I was offered a drink and accepted, just to keep my hands busy. Let's start from the beginning, Harris said, turning on a tape recorder. Tell me about your marriage. For the next 3 hours, I opened my heart. I spoke about the chasm that had grown between Jessica and me, about the affair, her cold ultimatum, and the humiliation of the past days. I was completely open about my feelings, anger, helplessness, and the desire for justice. So you were angry, Bowden said, leaning forward. Angry enough to do something like this? Enough to want to, I corrected carefully, but I didn't do it. Harris showed me crime scene photos. Jessica and David, the man I had never seen but had imagined exactly like that. Both shot in our bedroom. No signs of forced entry, no break-in. The shooter was either let in or had a key, the detective explained. Do you have any idea who might have wished your wife harm? I thought of Jake, his cold gaze, and how he had disappeared from my life as suddenly as he had appeared. No, I answered. My alibi was confirmed within a few hours. Rodriguez and the other workers testified to my presence at the construction site until 10 in the evening. Security cameras in the office showed my truck in the parking lot, and cell tower location data confirmed my whereabouts. The timeline was watertight. I could not have been at home at the time of the crime. But the detectives didn't let up. Did you hire anyone? Bowden pressed. No, I said firmly. Do you know anyone who might have done this as a favor for you? Harris asked. I remembered Jake's words. I owe your father. But Jake Thompson did not exist in any database. No address, no phone number, no traces on social media. He had vanished like smoke. No, I repeated once more. I was released at dawn with the condition not to leave the city. The crime scene tape was gone, but I couldn't bring myself to enter the house. Instead, I took a motel room and slept for 14 hours straight. The investigation dragged on for weeks. The murder weapon was never found, nor were any fingerprints or foreign DNA. David's family was devastated. He had been a successful real estate agent with no obvious enemies. Jessica's family blamed me, despite my watertight alibi. After a month, the case went cold. I sold the house, quit my job, and moved to my brother's place in Denver. I started over. A new construction company, a small apartment, trying to build a different life. Sometimes I searched online for Jake Thompson with no results, no military records, no obituaries. He had been my father's best friend for decades, but he existed only in the shadows, appearing only when needed. 6 months later, I raised my glass in a Denver bar and whispered into the void, "Thank you." No one answered, but I knew that Jake Thompson, whoever he really was, had heard me. I did not try to find him. Some debts are paid with silence, and some ghosts are better left undisturbed. Jessica had been right about one thing. Every problem has a solution. She just hadn't expected that it would come from a person who officially does not exist. He had settled an old debt with a dead friend by freeing his son from hell. The last thing I threw away before leaving Phoenix was the lingerie Jessica had bought for David. The price tags were still on them. Some things are better left unquestioned.